the saga of my brother's cancer scare, and the big bad grandma. Hello, I'm new here and have many stories to share about my grandma. She's a punt, to put it simply. I have many stories to share about her, some my own and some my mom's. She was the definition of mother-in-law from hell, but that's not here or there. But I have a story that is making my blood boil. She will now be called E.G., entitled Grandma, because I refuse to acknowledge her as my flesh and blood. Recently, my older brother, he's 22, developed a strange lump in his neck. This has been a month-long ordeal, so I will begin at the beginning. Upon receiving this news, my brother's first reaction was just to call my mother and dad, allowing them to spread the news if they wanted to. My mom told her mom so they could send him food, clothes, money, etc. My entitled grandma didn't become aware of this until about a week or so, mostly because she wasn't going to do shit but pester after the initial acknowledgement of the possibility of cancer. She proceeded to call my brother and yell at him for not telling her first, and how he's so selfish for keeping this diagnosis from her, a nurse. I find this stupid because she's a CNA, no insults to CNAs. You guys do wonderful work, and my family is a family of nurses and doctors. My brother is going to medical school himself. Not to mention that her being a nurse does not entitle her to know information about something going on with us. We didn't want to tell the extended family yet because we weren't sure if it was cancerous or a cyst. We didn't want to create unnecessary worry. Throughout the month, she had been calling and texting him nonstop, and when he didn't respond, she would blow up my phone and my other brother's phone. I don't live with my brother. Admittedly, I don't have much contact with him, so I don't know why she called me 45 times within 2 days. I had to block her number so I could get through school without my phone constantly buzzing in my pocket. She finally stopped when my dad stepped in and forced her to stop. At least, we hadn't heard from her much during that time, so I thought. We had to go over to where my dad lives so he could have it removed. Insurance problems were the reason we couldn't stay in town. It was just supposed to be my dad, my mom, and me. I was mostly there for my mom because I didn't want her to be alone. When we let family know, she decided to call my brother up and demanded he go to Afing Mayo Rochester for a second opinion. We don't even have the first opinion. All we know is that the lump has to be taken out. It hasn't even been biopsied or sent to pathology yet. And she kept insulting the hospital we were going to, and that Rochester is so much closer. It's not. In fact, it's farther. We were going to Afing Bellin Hospital. This made my dad angry because he works at the hospital and it's Afing Bellin. My dad calls her and tells her to shut the F up. Silence. We were hoping that would be it. It wasn't. The initial trip was going to be a 3.5 days trip. Leave Tuesday night to the hospital and leave Friday afternoon. It was just going to be us four. However, in true entitled grandma fashion, she decided to butt into the situation once more. She announces on Afing Facebook that she will be going to her grandbaby's surgery to be there for him, and that they should pray for her, not him. We were not aware she was coming until that announcement, a day before we had to leave. We sucked things up and just try to keep things nice and stress-free for my brother. When we arrived, it was smooth at first. The first night, we got dinner and discussed plans for the next day. My brother had a CT at 9:15 and then a consultation for surgery at 11:30. Afterwards, we were going to wander around the city and enjoy ourselves. The first part of our plans went well. We got up, got breakfast, and then went to the CT appointment. I was originally just going to meet my stepmom there, and we were going to go shopping and get some things for post-surgery. However, entitled grandma met us at the hospital. At the first appointment, she began to demand to take my mom's spot in the appointment room, saying she had more of a right in that room because she knew more than my mom. My mother, the mother of my brother. My brother put his foot down before my mom could say anything in return to her, and that shut her up a bit. She pouted in the corner while my brother and my parents went into the appointment with him. The appointment took about an hour or so. My stepmom and I began getting ready to go shopping for a bit, catching up and deciding where to go. Entitled grandma steps in and demands us to stay or to invite her along. We deny, saying that we wanted it to just be us because I haven't seen my stepmom in a while, and then the conversation begins to change for the worse. She began to call me a disappointment for not thinking of my grandmother and how I'm such an ungrateful brat. She would kill to spend another moment with her grandmother, and you never know. She may just drop dead, and then she started demanding why I didn't defend her and why I blocked her. I'm going to be honest. After years of abuse from this hag, and the burnout of high school, and the fact that it was 9 in the effing morning, I was not in a good mood. I replied in a short tone, "If you drop dead right now, I couldn't care less," and turned on my heel with my stepmom and went shopping. After the CT, we decided to go out as a family for a little bit and spend some time together until the next appointment. Entitled Grandma takes this opportunity to take control. She begins to direct us to places she wants to go, places she thinks my brother would like, and she keeps asking my brother to buy things for her. After all, this situation is just as hard on her as it is on my brother. I keep holding my tongue, simply guiding my brother away. My stepmom and I double-team Entitled Grandma whenever she starts pestering my brother over the smallest things, like why she wasn't allowed in the appointment. We separated them quickly and ended the conversation from the beginning. Finally, it comes to the second appointment, and we go. And instead of shopping, I decided to spend the appointment time doing schoolwork, since I was missing a few days. Not to mention, I was just so emotionally strained from trying to parent an effing boomer. Entitled Grandma began to pester me again. She was a bit nicer this time, asking me about school, etc. I began talking to her about my plans for my senior year and plans after college. She then began to try and tell me what I should do with my life. I should follow in my father's footsteps. I should become a respiratory therapist, or better yet, become a CNA like her. I said no, and that I planned to become either a psychologist or a physical therapist. And that was final. She pouts a bit and then starts telling me about classes I should take for my senior year, and that my senior year would be too hard for me. She says that sometimes I'm a bit slow and may not be able to handle calculus and physics at the same time. I bit my tongue a bit as I just ignored her. She then got angry at me for ignoring her. I honestly wish I had some witty things to say to her, but all I could muster was, "This is why no one wants you around." That shut her up for a little while. Finally, lunchtime came around, and we went out. My brother's choice, of course. My entitled grandma began to complain about the choice of restaurant, and how Cancun was trashy and the food wasn't good. When we arrive, she then begins to try and tell us what to order. We ignore her, of course. However, when she heard what I ordered enchiladas, she began on her wonderful tirade. She began to talk to me about how I should watch my cholesterol and my weight. She then said, "You know, a fat physical therapist is a bad physical therapist." I stared at her a bit before I simply moved seats, essentially leaving her alone at the end of the table. When a waiter comes over to get our orders, she then tries to change my order into a salad, saying I didn't need all those carbs. I'm in a bulk right now, and I want my effing carbs. My mom stepped in and simply told her to shut the F up. Entitled Grandma was most likely going to protest, but my dad gave her the glare of doom, and she shut up. She remained quiet, pouting, until it was time to go back to the hotels and sleep. Entitled Grandma began to pester me again to stay with her at the hotel. I wasn't going to. I didn't plan on it, and I did not want my mom alone. I set my foot down, saying I wasn't going anywhere with her. She proceeded to grab my arm and tried to drag me away, saying I was a brat and should listen to my elders. I simply pulled my arms out and called her a effing hag that should learn when someone wants her to go away. After that, I went back to our hotel and went to bed. The next day, we learned that she went home because she knows when she's not wanted, doubtful, and sent all of us a long string of texts telling us how she was so disappointed in all of us for not respecting her and being so mean. She was so stressed with the possibility of my brother having cancer, and she just wanted to spend this time with her family, so I ignored her. The rest of the trip went well, and my brother's surgery went well. Luckily, it was benign, and now he has a wicked scar from where his lymph node was removed, and I still have Entitled Grandma blocked. So, Entitled Grandma decides to make my brother's cancer scare about her and inflicting psychological damage on all of us. If you guys want more stories of Entitled Grandma, let me know because I have a ton. I do apologize for any formatting or misspellings. Let's listen to some comments and answers from the author before the end of the video.
I'd like to be charitable and chalk this up to dementia, but from your story it sounds like she's always been this way. What a piece of work.
I wish it was dementia, because then I'd have some pity for her, but she's been like this long before my dad was even born.
Good Lord, feel sorry for Grandpa.
I do too. We like to joke that she's the reason everyone in her family is an alcoholic, because it's true.
Wow, she's a peach. Isn't she? It's nice to hear stories where people actually sticks up for themselves and says things that need to be said. Good for you for sticking up for you and your family.
When you've dealt with her for as long as I've had, you get bold and learn not to take ish. I hope you enjoyed the first story. Now let's listen to another entitled Grandmother Story.
Grandma is a pitch when it comes to weddings. Hello, I'm back with some more grandma stories. This is 2 stories. The first one is when my mom and dad got married, and then my dad's second marriage. The first story is told second-hand while the second isn't. Let's start. My dad was around 27 and my mom 25. They've been together for 3 years previously and wanted to tie the knot. Entitled Grandma wasn't a big fan of my mom from the beginning, mostly because my mom didn't let her walk all over her to an extent, but also because my mom had an ex-fiancé and wasn't a virgin. Which is funny because neither was my dad. It first started when she ruined the proposal. My dad proposed at a nice dinner party with family involved so everyone could be there. My mom knew about the proposal because she picked out the ring. She just didn't know when it would happen. My entitled grandma thought it would be a good idea, and spoiled the proposal by declaring my uncle's deployment date right afterwards. It didn't work and she got chewed out by my dad afterwards. However, throughout the dinner, she was making sly comments about the ring being too fancy, and my mom being shallow about wanting such a nice ring. I've seen the ring. It's 1 diamond with a twist band on it. Far from big, far from fancy. And after my mom didn't react to the ring, she began to go after my mom's weight. The dinner was hell, and when she and my dad went home they didn't talk much. And then the planning went to hell. My mom and dad wanted to be married within a year of the proposal, mostly due to finances, and because my mom wanted to start having children. My grandma disagreed with this. They were moving too fast, and when my mom mentioned her plan for children, all of a sudden she was too old to begin having children, and that if she wanted children she should have stayed with her fiancé instead of marrying her son. Keep in mind my mom was 25 if they got married, she'd be 26. And then entitled grandma began to tell her to stop with her career because it would be easier to just be a stay-at-home wife, especially if she wanted kids. My mom didn't stop her pursuit in her career. My mom ended up just ignoring her for the most part, ignoring phone calls, texts and messages, which caused entitled grandma to have a conniption fit and go crying to my dad only for him to say, "K." Her behavior continued throughout wedding planning. Everything had to be her way. The church was never right, the arch, the date, the wedding list. She tried to convince my parents to push back their wedding to fit her and her friend's schedule. And when my mom denied her friends coming, she threatened not to come. My parents budget only slightly, mostly with the church because my mom wasn't attached to any church for the most part. Entitled grandma tried to convince them to get married in her church. My dad nor my mom lived close to her. My parents lived in Michigan, Upper Peninsula, while my grandma lived in Wisconsin. The church was also incredibly small as it was for a town of under 2,000 people. While my mom and dad had a small wedding of only family and a handful of friends, it wouldn't have fit my mom's family. Entitled grandma pitched and moaned about not having the wedding at her church until my grandpa shut her up saying he'd go without her. Wedding dress shopping came around. My mom wanted simple pale colors for bridesmaids, and the wedding party and guest could wear a couple neutral colors. The wedding party was pale greens and pinks to accent her dress. She had a beautiful dress, laced up with a puffy skirt, a beautiful veil and corset with flowy sleeves. Entitled grandma did not like the dress. My mom didn't invite her to wedding dress shopping and just had her bridesmaids there. Neither did she invite her own mother, but that's because she lived in Florida. Entitled grandma was infuriated about this. How dare she not invite her mother-in-law? Didn't you know that my aunt never invited her to go wedding dress shopping with her? Wonder why? And that she always dreamed of picking a dress for her daughter and daughter-in-law. My mom broke her heart. And then she saw the dress. Her lips pursed, her eyes widened. She began to tear into the dress, saying it made my mom look like a bore. And how dare she wear white and lie to God? The dress looked like it came out of a dumpster. The dress didn't flatter her. She looked like a sausage. My mom was so close to returning the dress because she no longer felt beautiful in the dress she picked out. Until my grandma dug into entitled grandma and made her go crying to my dad like a beaten puppy. Entitled grandma cooled down for a little while. She didn't go after my mom with planning, instead she went after my dad. My dad for the most part has always been the quiet stoic type. His way of dealing with his mom is agreeing with her but not doing what she says. She wanted to have this selection of wine and beer. My dad said okay, but didn't go with her choices. You should do this for tables. Okay, doesn't do it. You should say this. Okay, doesn't do it. Do this, do that. Okay, doesn't do it. This method was rather effective at times. However, her nagging started to get worse as she felt like she was getting her way. She became more bold and started calling caterers and flower arrangers to change plans. My mom and dad told them ahead of time, don't change anything unless you hear it from us. After a few couple calls of fighting, arguing and shouting, she stopped. Mostly because my dad threatened to uninvite her if she kept going. Her nagging went from the wedding workers to him. She nagged him so much that he had to go to the ER for severe migraines and headaches twice. Finally the wedding came around. It was going to happen the way my parents wanted. She could make petty comments and remarks about things, but she wasn't going to ruin this day for Mom. Well, as you all know, she's a pain in the ass. You could probably have seen this from a mile away, but she wore a wedding dress to the wedding. In fact, entitled grandma wore the same wedding dress she wanted my mom to wear. She even came in with a little entourage of guests in wedding dresses. My dad took one look at them, walked away and had her friends kicked out. Entitled grandma stayed because trying to kick her out would cause cops to be called, and more headaches than they'd like. The wedding continued, and entitled grandma wasn't allowed in photos. That was my dad's first wedding. My mom says divorcing my father was such a relief because she could get away from his shitty mother. My dad, on the other hand, is stuck with her till she dies. So is his new wife, my stepmom. My dad and my stepmom got engaged in the year of 2019 to 2020 during New Year's. They also planned on a one-year plan, mostly because they wanted to get it over with, since they've been together for 8 to 9 years already. And getting married at this point was a formality to tie things together. When they announced the date, they announced it to be on entitled grandma's birthday. She was ecstatic for that until she realized her birthday would have to be shared. In private, she pitched to her gaggle of cronies about having the wedding on her birthday. But COVID hit and the wedding got pushed back to 2022 for a different date. Instead, it was my stepmom's mom's birthday. Her mom had long passed and figured this was a good way to include her. Ensure the usual nagging. How dare she make it about her mother? My dad at this point grew a backbone and began putting his mom in her place. Perhaps it was his sobriety, or perhaps it was because he's been through one wedding and he ain't doing it for a third time. Entitled grandma tried to do the usual but in and make things about her. Had to be her way. But with a few tongue lashes it stopped. Until it came to me. Over COVID I gained about 50 pounds due to stress and pain. I had a lot going on that resulted in me being overweight. I have since been turning that weight into muscle. But I also still had a lot of muscle definition back then too. In fact, I had huge shoulders, swimmer shoulders, and that made it difficult to find some dresses. My stepmom wanted simple black dresses. We could decide the style. It just had to be black with open shoulders. I corresponded with my stepsister to see what she would wear, and we would get the same dress. Entitled grandma wanted me to get a different dress. A dress that was frilly. A dress that wasn't black. A dress that was gold. A dress that was cream. I immediately declined this opposition. I knew what she was trying to do. The only reason she was even dress shopping with me was because I was 13, couldn't drive, and didn't have my stepmom's card like she did. I picked out the same dress my sister did and got it in black. They needed to special order it because they didn't have my size. They had one smaller and one bigger, so I was able to see what it would look like approximately. Entitled Grandma did not like the dress. It was a simply flowy skirt that hit the ankles and the bodice crossed over as a little design. For the most part it was modest. The only thing really shown was my face and arms. Entitled Grandma didn't like that my arms could be shown because people could see my strawberry skin, my muscles. It made me look like a man. It made me look like a log. I was too fat for it. While she put me down, I didn't care. I sent it to my stepmom and she loved it. I told Entitled Grandma this is what we were going with, and that was it. When we went to put in the order ticket, she tried to order a different style in the color she wanted. I already talked with the worker and went, "Hey, she's gonna pull this, but you put down what I say, not what she says, because she will ruin this wedding." I think the worker didn't take it seriously at first until she started to see how Entitled Grandma was acting. Finally, the dress shopping was done, and then it was shown shopping for a pair of flats. My stepmom had a specific style in mind: black flats with a pointed toe. In general, I have trouble with finding shoes. I'm a size 6 in women's with wide feet, laughing my ass off. So we had to go to 3 different places just to find the shoes. Entitled Grandma was angry and made weird comments about my feet. I don't know why she was angry, like I have my dad's fat feet and my mom's shoe size. She finds the weirdest things to comment about. After shopping around, Entitled Grandma wanted to get lunch. I didn't. So I told her that I had an obligation. She then proceeded to call me a disappointment for not thinking of my grandmother, and that she hasn't seen me in a while, and that she deserves to have dinner with her grandkid. I walked home. I didn't want to deal with her, and the shopping plaza we went to was barely a mile away. A few weeks later, my dress came in, and we needed to go back to get it hemmed. I planned on just going with my mom, but in true Entitled Grandma fashion, she butted in and took me instead. I simply bowed my head and took things in stride. During that time, I was experimenting with my hair. I talked with my stepmom about how she wanted my hair because I planned on taking a lot of length off and dyeing my hair. My stepmom was like, "I don't effing care, do what you want." And so I got this boyish cut and had it dyed a cool red to match my mom. Entitled Grandma did not like this. No, she did not. I looked even more like a man. What was I? Insert slur for trans people here. And how dare I do something so drastic with my hair without consulting her? I took in her comments about my hair in stride, ignoring her. Positives about being deaf: I can just turn my hearing aids off. Finally, I didn't have to see her till the wedding once everything was done with. Finally, the wedding came around. Entitled Grandma complained about the decorations for a little while, commenting about how everything is too vintage. The hotel wasn't a church. How dare she not get married in a church? The Landmark Inn, in Marquette, Michigan, if you're wondering. I ignored the comments and didn't bother telling my dad or my stepmom because I just wanted things to go smoothly and not bother them with anything. We went out to get our hair done, and while I was in the seat, I could hear my grandma commenting about how I destroyed my hair, only for my stepmom to shut her up and change the subject. During the wedding day, everything was relatively quiet with her. A few comments here and there, but she was cordial, almost nice. When it came to put on the dress, we learned that we got the wrong size pantyhose. We accidentally got the child size larges, and not the woman's large. I was just going to go without. The skirt was long enough where no one would notice. My grandma offered me a pair of hers with the comment of, "I highly doubt they'll fit someone your size, but you can try. They fit." The wedding went smoothly. She didn't wear white, but she dressed like she was going to a funeral and was in mourning and not attending her son's wedding. The reception came around and we ate. She made a few comments about me not being ladylike, little did she know, and how I should have got the salmon and not the steak. The night went on a bit quietly. The reception was to go on till 11 p.m. with an hour for cleanup. One thing about me is that I tend to go to bed early, around 8 to 9. We were staying in the actual hotel, so it's not like we had to walk or drive. I mentioned wanting to go back up to the room and sleep. My grandma denied me. Eventually 10:30 came around, and admittedly I was cranky and tired. I've been awake since 5:30 and wanted to go to bed. Entitled Grandma eventually came around and said, I ought to be grateful to be a part of this wedding, and should learn to be more ladylike. I should suck things up. It took me crying and begging to go to bed for my stepmom to step in and tell her to give me a room key so I could go to bed. I finally changed and went to sleep only to have the worst night of rest in my life because entitled grandma kept waking me up. She woke me up when she came in at 11 to come help clean things up. I went down, cleaned things, and up went back to sleep. She woke me up almost every goddamn hour of the night to turn around or to tell me to stop snoring. I was tired and slept the entire 7.5-hour car ride back home. Apart from her, everything else in the wedding was beautiful and fantastic. Thank you for hearing my ranting. So, entitled grandma is a pitch when it comes to weddings. I have plenty more stories to share and probably could write a novel.
Thank you very much for sharing this story. At your young age, you already know how to stand up for yourself. Most importantly, from somebody that is supposed to help you grow, that is supposed to love you, not to antagonize you.
Thank you for listening to this story. What would you have done in that situation? And for those who stayed to the end, thank you. If you like this type of content, feel free to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you soon.